Sirens blared outside as Karen frantically dialed 911 on her vintage rotary phone. Yes, hello. There's an intruder in my home. You have to send the police right away. Her hand trembled as she gripped the receiver, eyes darting toward the front door. Hurry, please. This man is trespassing and refuses to leave. On the other end of the line, the dispatcher remained calm. Ma'am, can you provide more details about the situation? Karen's voice rose in panic. He barged in uninvited and is now roaming around my house. I demand you arrest him immediately. The dispatcher glanced at the address, recognizing it as the home of Officer Jessica Wright, their newest recruit. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stay on the line and remain calm. Help is on the way. Jessica had just returned home from her shift when she heard the commotion outside. Stepping onto her porch, she spotted Karen gesturing wildly while on the phone. Realization dawned. This was her own residence, and Karen was calling the police on her. Jaw clenched, Jessica strode across the lawn, identifying herself as the officer in charge. Ma'am, what seems to be the problem? Karen whirled around, phone still pressed to her ear. Officer, thank goodness you're here. This man has broken into my home and is refusing to leave. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the line. Ma'am, the officer is right there with you. You can hang up the phone now. Slowly, Karen lowered the receiver, eyes narrowing as she recognized the woman standing before her. You? But how? This is my house, Karen. Jessica interrupted. I live here. Karen's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. Your house? No, that can't be right. This is my neighborhood, and I know every single person who lives on this street. Jessica held up a hand. Well, now to know one more. I moved in last month. Impossible. Karen spat. I would have noticed a new neighbor, especially one who looks like. She paused, eyeing Jessica's uniform. Wait a minute. You're a police officer. Jessica nodded, already anticipating the woman's next move. Yes, I am, and I'm the one in charge here. Karen's grip tightened on the phone as realization dawned. Oh, this is just perfect. You're one of them, aren't you? A rule-breaking, authority-defying heathen who thinks they can do whatever they want. Jessica sighed, recognizing the familiar pattern of Karen's entitled outbursts. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to calm down and return to your own home. There's been a misunderstanding, and no laws have been broken. Misunderstanding? Karen screeched. The only misunderstanding here is that you think you can barge into my neighborhood and do as you please. This is my territory, and I won't stand for your kind ruining it. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Your kind? Karen's eyes narrowed. Yes, your kind. Young, disrespectful, and clearly lacking any sense of community values. Well, I won't have it. The sound of sirens in the distance signaled the arrival of backup, but Jessica knew this confrontation was far from over. The squad car pulled up to the curb, and two officers stepped out, surveying the tense standoff between Jessica and Karen. What's the situation here, Officer Wright? One of the officers asked, approaching the pair. Jessica turned to the newcomers, grateful for the additional support. We've got a bit of a misunderstanding, officers. This resident called 911, reporting an intruder in my home. Karen interjected, her voice dripping with indignation. That's because this hooligan has illegally taken up residence in my neighborhood. I demand you arrest him immediately. The officers exchanged a puzzled glance, then one of them addressed Karen. Ma'am, this is Officer Wright's home. There's been no criminal activity here. Karen's face contorted with rage. No criminal activity. Are you blind? This man is trespassing on my property. Jessica held up a hand. Ma'am, I can assure you that I legally reside here. I'm an officer with the local police department, and this is my home. Karen's eyes widened with a mixture of disbelief and fury. You're a cop, and you live here. She pointed an accusatory finger at Jessica. This is an outrage. I won't stand for it. The officers remained calm, trying to defuse the situation. Ma'am, we understand you're upset, but there's no need for further escalation. If you have any concerns, I'd suggest speaking with Officer Wright directly or filing a formal complaint with the department. Karen's chest heaved as she glared at Jessica. Formal complaint? Oh, you can bet I'll be doing that. And the entire neighborhood will be joining me. This is unacceptable, and I won't rest until you're run out of our community. With that, Karen stormed back to her house, slamming the door behind her. Jessica turned to the officers, a weary sigh escaping her lips. Thank you for your help, but I have a feeling this isn't the last we've heard from her. One of the officers nodded sympathetically. We'll make a note of the incident and keep an eye on the situation. Let us know if you need anything else. As the squad car pulled away, Jessica couldn't help but wonder what other challenges might lie ahead in her new neighborhood. One thing was certain: Karen was not going to make this easy. That evening, Jessica sat at her kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee and mulling over the day's events. She knew dealing with Karen was going to be an uphill battle, but she hadn't anticipated the woman's sheer audacity in calling the police on her own neighbor. As she contemplated her next move, a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Cautiously, she peered through the window, spotting a small group of people gathered on her porch. Steeling herself, she opened the door. Good evening, Officer Wright. I'm Evelyn, the president of the Oakwood Homeowners Association. We'd like to have a word with you, if you don't mind. Jessica suppressed a groan. Of course, Karen would enlist the HOA to do her bidding. What can I do for you, Mrs. Evelyn? The woman offered a terse smile. We've received a rather concerning complaint from one of our residents, Karen Wilkins. She claims you've illegally taken up residence in our neighborhood without proper authorization. Jessica crossed her arms, fixing Evelyn with a steady gaze. I can assure you that I legally purchased this home and have every right to live here. Evelyn's smile tightened. Be that as it may, we have certain community standards and expectations that all residents must adhere to. Mrs. Wilkins has raised valid concerns about your presence, and the HOA board feels it's our duty to investigate further. Jessica's eyes narrowed. Investigate? What exactly are you suggesting? Well, we'd like to conduct a formal inspection of your property to ensure you're in compliance with our bylaws and covenants, Evelyn explained. And of course, we'll need to verify your ownership and residency status. Jessica could feel her frustration rising. I don't appreciate the implication that I'm somehow breaking the rules. I've done nothing wrong, and I certainly won't allow you to barge into my home uninvited. Evelyn's expression hardened. I'm afraid you don't have a choice in the matter, Officer Wright. As the HOA president, I have the authority to initiate inspections and enforce our community standards. If you refuse to cooperate, we'll have no choice but to pursue further action. Jessica bit back a retort, realizing this was merely the beginning of a much larger battle. Fine. When would you like to conduct this inspection? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, Evelyn replied, a smug satisfaction evident in her tone. And I'd strongly advise you to have all your paperwork in order. With that, the group turned and retreated back to their homes, leaving Jessica to contemplate the looming confrontation. She knew this was no longer just about her personal living situation. It was about standing up to the abuse of power and entitlement that ran rampant in her new neighborhood. The next morning, Jessica steeled herself as Evelyn and several other HOA members arrived at her doorstep, clipboards in hand. Inviting them inside, she watched as they scrutinized every inch of her home, making notes and murmuring to one another. Evelyn, in particular, seemed intent on finding any possible infraction, her eyes narrowing as she examined Jessica's decor and furnishings. The paint color in the living room is a bit too vibrant for our community standards, she toasted, jotting something down. And that artwork on the wall is quite unconventional. Jessica bit her tongue, resisting the urge to defend her personal choices. She knew this was merely a thinly veiled attempt to find fault and justify Karen's complaint. As the inspection continued, Evelyn's colleagues poked and prodded, opening cabinets and investigating the backyard. Jessica could feel her patience wearing thin, but she remained silent, determined not to give them any ammunition to use against her. Finally, Evelyn cleared her throat, addressing Jessica with a cool, calculated gaze. "Well, Officer Wright, it appears there are a few discrepancies that we'll need to address." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" "For starters, your lawn is in need of some maintenance," Evelyn said, gesturing toward the window. "The HOA has very specific guidelines about proper yard upkeep, and yours is simply not up to par." Jessica glanced outside, noting the slightly overgrown grass. "I've been working long hours, but I'll be sure to tend to it this weekend." Evelyn nodded, her expression unreadable. "See that you do. And then there's the matter of your fence. It appears to be in need of repair." Jessica frowned, stepping outside to inspect the fence. Sure enough, a few boards were loose and in need of attention. "I'll get that taken care of as well." Evelyn's lips curled into a thin smile. "See that you do. And one more thing. We've noticed you haven't yet paid your annual HOA dues." Jessica's brow furrowed. "I only just moved in last month. I haven't received any information about HOA dues." "Well, that's simply unacceptable," Evelyn chided. "All residents are required to pay their dues promptly, regardless of how long they've lived here. I'll need you to take care of that as soon as possible." Jessica nodded, already anticipating the next demand. "Of course. Anything else?" Evelyn considered for a moment, then shook her head. "That'll be all for now. But do be mindful, Officer Wright. We take our community standards very seriously. Any further infractions will result in penalties and potential fines." As the group departed, Jessica felt a mixture of frustration and resignation. She knew this was just the beginning of a long and arduous battle against the HOA's petty tyranny. But she was determined to stand her ground, no matter what challenges lay ahead. In the days that followed, Jessica found herself constantly on edge, waiting for the next confrontation with the HOA. True to Evelyn's word, she'd quickly paid the outstanding dues and set about tackling the maintenance issues they'd identified. But it seemed no matter how diligently she worked, the HOA was always there to nitpick and find fault. Her lawn, once lush and vibrant, was now meticulously manicured to Evelyn's standards. The fence, too, had been repaired, the boards freshly stained and secured. Yet, the complaints kept coming. The trash cans were left out too long, the flower beds weren't weeded properly, the house number plaque needed to be repositioned. Each time, Jessica would dutifully address the issue, only to be met with a new demand. It was a never-ending cycle of petty bureaucracy, and Jessica could feel her frustration mounting with every passing day. One evening, as she sat on her porch, sipping a cup of coffee, she spotted Karen striding across the lawn, a triumphant smile on her face. Bracing herself, she waited for the inevitable confrontation. "Well, well, well," Karen drawled, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "If it isn't the neighborhood's newest troublemaker." Jessica sighed, setting down her mug. "What do you want, Karen?" Karen's grin widened. "Oh, I just wanted to check in on my dear friend, the good officer. I hear the HOA has been keeping you on your toes lately." Jessica narrowed her eyes. "Your point?" "My point is," Karen said, leaning in closer, "that you're clearly not welcome here. This is my community, and I won't stand for your kind of disruptive behavior." Jessica felt a surge of indignation. "My kind? What exactly is that supposed to mean?" Karen waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, you know, young, arrogant, and completely disrespectful of our neighborhood's values. You think you can just waltz in and do as you please, but I won't have it." Jessica clenched her jaw, fighting the urge to lash out. I'm simply trying to be a good neighbor and follow the rules, Karen. If the HOA has issues with how I'm maintaining my property, I'll address them. Karen scoffed. Address them? Ha! You think a few lawn trimmings and a fresh coat of paint are going to fool anyone? You're just delaying the inevitable, Officer Wright. Sooner or later, you're going to slip up, and when you do, I'll be there to make sure you're run out of this neighborhood for good. With that, Karen turned on her heel and stormed off, leaving Jessica to stew in her own anger and frustration. It was clear that the battle lines had been drawn, and Karen was determined to win at all costs. But Jessica wasn't about to back down. She'd spent years honing her skills as a police officer, and she wasn't about to let a petty tyrant like Karen Wilkins push her around. This was her home now, and she was prepared to fight for it. In the following weeks, the war of attrition between Jessica and the HO escalated. No matter how diligently she tended to her property, Evelyn and her cohorts always found something new to criticize. The lawn needed more frequent mowing. The flower beds were uneven. The house number plaque was crooked. Each time, Jessica would dutifully address the issue, only to be met with a new list of demands. It became a never-ending cycle of compliance and control, and Jessica could feel her patience wearing thin. She knew this was about more than just her home. It was a battle for her right to exist in this community on her own terms. One day, as Jessica was mowing her lawn, she noticed a group of her neighbors gathering on the sidewalk, whispering and casting furtive glances in her direction. Curious, she approached them, only to be met with cold stares and averted eyes. "Excuse me, what's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. A middle-aged woman named Deborah stepped forward, her expression stern. "We've been talking, Officer Wright, and we're concerned about the direction this neighborhood is heading." Jessica's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Deborah glanced around nervously before continuing. "Well, it's just that ever since you moved in, there's been a lot of unrest. The HOA has been cracking down on all of us, and we're worried that your presence is causing more trouble than it's worth." Jessica felt a surge of indignation. "Trouble? I've done nothing but try to be a good neighbor and follow the rules." Deborah held up a hand. I know. But you have to understand, this is a tight-knit community, and we value our traditions and way of life. Some of us feel that your unconventional lifestyle is disrupting the delicate balance we've worked so hard to maintain." Jessica's eyes widened. "My unconventional lifestyle? What exactly are you implying?" Deborah shifted uncomfortably. "Well, the fact that you're an unmarried woman living alone. It's just not the kind of thing we're used to seeing around here." Jessica felt a flash of anger. "I don't recall my marital status or living arrangements being any of your business. And frankly, I'm appalled that you and the rest of the neighborhood would judge me based on such outdated and discriminatory criteria." Deborah's cheeks flushed. "It's not discrimination, Officer Wright. It's about preserving the values and character of our community. And quite frankly, we're concerned that you're not the right fit." Jessica clenched her fists, struggling to keep her composure. "So, what are you saying? That you want me to leave?" Deborah hesitated, glancing back at the group of onlookers. "Well, we haven't decided anything definitive yet, but we're going to be having a community meeting to discuss the matter further. And we'd strongly encourage you to attend, so you can hear our concerns firsthand." With that, Deborah and the others turned and retreated, leaving Jessica to stew in her own anger and disbelief. It was clear now that this wasn't just about the HOA's petty rules. It was about a deep-seated resistance to change and a refusal to accept anyone who didn't fit their narrow definition of what a proper community member should be. Jessica knew she had to act, and fast, if she was going to protect her right to live in this neighborhood on her own terms. The day of the community meeting arrived, and Jessica braced herself for the confrontation. As she walked into the town hall, she was met with a sea of unfamiliar faces, all turned toward her with a mixture of curiosity and hostility. Evelyn, The HOA president stood at the front of the room, a self-satisfied smile on her face. Welcome, everyone, to this very important community meeting. I'm sure you're all aware of the situation that has arisen in our neighborhood. She paused, her gaze settling on Jessica. As you know, we've had a new resident move in among us, Officer Jessica Wright. And frankly, some of us have expressed concerns about the impact her presence is having on our community. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and Jessica felt her heart begin to race. This was no mere HOA meeting. It was a coordinated effort to ostracize her from the very place she called home. Evelyn continued, her voice dripping with false concern. Now, I know we all want to be welcoming and inclusive, but we also have to consider the long-term effects of allowing certain individuals to infiltrate our tight-knit community. Jessica's jaw clenched, but she remained silent, determined to let Evelyn and the others incriminate themselves. You see, Evelyn went on, Officer Wright's lifestyle and values simply don't align with the standards and traditions we've worked so hard to uphold. And we're worried that her presence will only serve to disrupt the delicate balance of our neighborhood. A woman in the front row, presumably Deborah, stood up. That's right. We've already seen the HOA having to crack down on all sorts of infractions since she moved in. It's clear she has no respect for our community rules and values. Jessica's eyes narrowed. Excuse me, but I've done nothing but try to be a good neighbor and follow the rules. Any issues the HOA has had with me have been petty and unfounded. Evelyn raised a hand, silencing the crowd. Be that as it may, Officer Wright, the fact remains that you are a disruptive presence in our community, and we, the residents of Oakwood, have decided that it's in the best interest of our neighborhood for you to relocate elsewhere. The room erupted in a chorus of applause and cheers, and Jessica felt her heart sink. This was no longer about the HOA or even Karen's petty grievances. This was a coordinated effort to drive her out, based solely on her status as an unmarried, independent woman in a community that valued conformity above all else. As the applause died down, Jessica took a deep breath, her voice steady and resolute. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you all, but I have no intention of leaving. This is my home now, and I'm not going anywhere. The crowd fell silent, stunned by her defiance. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, and Jessica knew the battle lines had been drawn. This was a fight she was determined to win, no matter the cost. The room erupted in a cacophony of outraged protests as Jessica's declaration hung in the air. Evelyn's face flushed with anger, and she raised her hands, desperately trying to restore order. Quiet, all of you, she demanded, glaring at Jessica. Officer Wright, you're clearly not grasping the gravity of the situation here. This is our community, and we've made our decision. You need to leave, or will be forced to take drastic measures. Jessica stood her ground, her expression unwavering. I'm not going anywhere, Evelyn. This is my home, and I have every right to live here. If you and the rest of the residents have a problem with that, then I suggest you take it up with the proper authorities. Deborah, the woman from the earlier confrontation, stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. Proper authorities? You mean like your little police buddies? Well, let me tell you something, Officer Wright. We all know how to work the system, and we're not afraid to use it against you. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Is that a threat, Deborah? Deborah's lips curled into a sneer. Call it what you will, but we're not going to let some outsider come in and disrupt our way of life. This is our neighborhood, and we'll do whatever it takes to protect it. The crowd erupted into a chorus of agreement, and Jessica realized she was facing a formidable adversary. These people were not just petty bureaucrats. They were a well-organized, deeply entrenched community that was willing to resort to any means necessary to maintain their status quo. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice dripping with false civility. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm sure we can come to a reasonable compromise, Officer Wright. Perhaps we could discuss a voluntary relocation plan with a generous compensation package. Jessica's eyes narrowed. Compensation package? You can't be serious. This is my home, and I have every right to be here. Evelyn's expression hardened. The right to live in this community is a privilege, not a given. And quite frankly, we've decided that your presence is no longer welcome. The crowd erupted into a chorus of agreement, and Jessica felt a chill run down her spine. She knew she was up against a formidable adversary, one that was willing to stop at nothing to force her out. But Jessica was no stranger to a fight. She had spent years honing her skills as a police officer, and she wasn't about to back down in the face of such blatant discrimination and abuse of power. Squaring her shoulders, she looked Evelyn and the crowd dead in the eye. Well, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to try a little harder than that. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm prepared to fight this all the way to the top if I have to. The crowd fell silent, stunned by her defiance. Evelyn's lips tightened into a thin line, and Jessica knew she had just drawn the proverbial line in the sand. This was a battle that was far from over, and Jessica was determined to emerge victorious, no matter the cost.